Okay, well, I mentioned earlier that I've switched out prophets on you. Isaiah is out for this morning, and we're bringing in the left-hander, for the relief pitcher, and it's going to be Samuel. So here we go. So Samuel's got an interesting life. So we're going to walk through the life of Samuel. There's some really good things, some good teaching points in there. It's really great to see you in church, Bob Orr. I'm glad to see you, my friend. Look at there. All right. Okay. We can welcome Bob Orr here. You bet. That's right. I didn't see you until just now. So after I walk through Samuel's life, then I'm going to go back and we're going to take a look at this one particular passage, this episode, and there's a life lesson in there that I'd like for us all to hear. So we all have a story, right? We all have parents from which we were born and where we lived and where we've been and things we've done and big things that happened through our lives. Well, let's go with Samuel, is no different. Samuel's mother was a devout woman named Hannah. So it's been a long time ago. So Hannah was one of two wives of a guy named Elkanah. And it says that Elkanah loved Hannah best. Can you imagine what a mess this would be, right? We have two wives, two husbands. I don't care what it's just not a good idea. And so I'm glad we've moved on from there. But Hannah had not given Elkanah any children. And that was very disappointing for her. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the other wife, a woman named Peninnah, had given him a bevy of children, and Peninnah never missed a chance to tell Hannah and remind her about that over and over again. And so at her wit's end, Hannah again goes to the temple to pray and asks God to give her a son. And Eli is the priest there, and he watches this woman who's praying, and her mouth is moving, but he can't hear any words. So he accuses her of being drunk early in the morning. And she says, no, I am fervently praying for the Lord to grant me a son. And so Eli blesses her and sends her on her way. And sure enough, within the next year or so, she gives birth to a son, and she names him Samuel, a name that means either God hears, or God has heard, or heard of God. It's a beautiful thing. A son that she gives over to the Lord. This is another thing we can't imagine doing, but this is how. So once young Samuel was weaned from his mother, she took him to the temple where he could serve the Lord and live there, the whole thing. She could come to visit, but that would be his home. So a few chapters later, in chapter 3, the boy Samuel hears from God. It's a beautiful story. If you don't know that one, or if you haven't read that in a while, look at 1 Samuel chapter 3. He hears from God. And what he hears is this, that his mentor, Eli, the priest, has fallen out of favor with God, and that he, Samuel, would soon, in the years ahead, take the holy reins over all of Israel. I don't know about you, that's some first message to hear from God, right? Like, wow, it's the first message to give a boy who at this point is somewhere between the ages of, say, 5 to maybe 12, and that's the message he gets. And so we fast forward a couple of chapters, and Samuel is now a man. Samuel is not just a man, though. Samuel is the man. He is the voice. He is the instrument of God in amongst the Israelites. So we push on to chapter 8, and where something very interesting happens. Alan read for us a moment ago some of this. And we'll come back to this here in just a few moments. But the Israelites come to Samuel, the man of God, and they demand a king. And they say, "Give us a king to govern us." And you can imagine Samuel saying, "Give you a what?" And they said, "A king." And Samuel pushes back, but they insist. So let's take a break in the action here. Just make sure you're tracking with me. So if you're with me, can you understand what the problem is with the Israelites asking for a king? Are you following me here? Here's the problem. The problem is who is leading the Israelites right now? And it's not Samuel. It's God. God is leading. And so Samuel essentially says to them, so let me get this straight. We are God's chosen people, and God is leading us, but you want a human king instead, like everyone else has. And in a sense, they replied, well, yes, but it's not you, God. I mean, it's us. It's not you. It's not you. It's us. Please don't take this as any kind of rejection. More on that in a moment. So we move on with the story after some back and forth between Samuel and God. In chapter 9, God instructs Samuel to go and anoint Saul to be the king, the very first king of the Israelites. And there's a great thing. In the moment, the story recounts this, that God gave Saul another heart. This is not the first heart transplant. That's not what we're talking about here. He gave him a new heart. It's a beautiful thing. How cool is that, right? So now all of this happened in some semi-remote area of the world. Fox News was not there to cover it and to report on it. Nor was any other broadcast. So it took it a while for the word to spread, for the word to get out, for Saul to be recognized as king. So Samuel was determined to do this right. So he gathered all the people at a place called Mizpah. And there, as was their custom, they drew lots, kind of rock, paper, scissors, the shortest straw, whatever it was. They drew lots, and they would draw them among all the tribes of Israel until one was chosen. And then from that tribe, they would draw lots among all the families until one family was chosen. And then they would draw amongst that family from all the individuals until that one individual was chosen. And as God intended, Saul was chosen to be the king. Okay, so here's the funny part of the story, or sad, depending on how you want to look at it, but here it is. Saul was chosen by Lot, and we just assume that he's just right there in the midst of it, watching to see how this is all going to work out, and he's standing there rather regal and ready to take his moment and to step into history and all of that. But actually, Saul is not there. I mean, he's there, but he's not right there where they are. And so they're looking around for him, and they can't find him. And they can't find him anywhere. And so they inquire of the Lord. Here's the passage. So they inquired again of the Lord. And the Lord said, see, he has hidden himself among the baggage. And so I can just hear Samuel's best announcer voice when he'd say, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the man you've been begging for, the King of Israel. Here he's, give it up for King Saul. And he looked like that, and there's no one there. And so he gives it a minute, and he says, once again, I give to you the King of Israel, King Saul. And again, he's not there. You've seen the end of The Sound of Music, right? The Von Trapp family singers, right? And they're not there. They're just not there. I have a friend who, from long ago, who did this at his wedding. And this is bad. This was bad. I didn't attend the wedding, but he was so freaked out and overwhelmed by the thought of marrying this woman and committing himself that He physically went and checked himself into the hospital. Charlotte, can you imagine? He went and checked himself into the hospital, wanting and hoping somehow to be gravely ill, thus absolving him of any responsibility of actually showing up at his wedding or being able to pick up his phone and call or text or answer any of those things. I said, I wasn't at the wedding. My friends who went said it was horrible. We're in this beautiful setting, this beautiful venue. It's all ready to go. The people are there. This beautiful, kind young woman, they're ready to marry her fiance, and he is hidden amongst the baggage. So back to our story. So they drag Saul out of the baggage and they bring him up front and they prop him up there. And probably not the strongest start to a kingship you could imagine. But the people were so desperate. They were convinced they wanted a king. So even a king who would hide from them, this is great. This is what we wanted. Here he is. And that's good. Well, the good news is it wasn't long before King Saul began to kind of find his stride. And as a military leader especially, began whooping up on some of the local enemy peoples, the Philistines and others. And so, long live the king, right? But not too far into that, Saul makes a big mistake. Now, I want to get into this. It's kind of hard for us to understand, but he made an unlawful sacrifice. And sacrifices were a big thing. They did it in the Old Testament these days, but Saul did that wrong, and he knew better. So that, of course, raised a red flag, and Samuel, the prophet of God, hears a fresh word from the Lord and swoops in to inform Saul that he is out and that God is looking for choosing a new king. So here's the verse in chapter 13. But now, Saul, your kingdom will not continue. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart. Now there's a prayer for us, to be a woman or a man after God's own heart. That's a beautiful prayer. There's a guy named Gary Chapman sang a great song by that title a long time ago. It's too melancholy even for me to sing, so we're going to pass on that for today. But then we move on to chapter 16, in which Samuel anoints a young shepherd boy named David to be the second king of Israel. You know David and Goliath, David and Bathsheba, David with the really cool statue in Italy somewhere, that David, that's the guy. So here, those are the high points of Samuel's life, and we find those in the first 16 chapters of 1 Samuel. So now I'd like to return to that bit that we talked about earlier, this about them wanting a king. They wanted a king. So let's think about that for a moment, would you? Again, they are the people of God. They have what no one else has. They are the chosen people. And that seems pretty awesome, doesn't it? I mean, that would seem like something you'd want to be proud of, that you wouldn't want to give that up for anything. But no, these people, they don't feel special at all. They don't feel chosen. As far as they can see, we're the only ones that don't have the very first thing. We don't even have a king. We want a king, yeah, a king. Someone to look up to, someone to lead us into battle, someone to unify us. And so there's God up there listening and thinking, what? What is God thinking about now, right? He's thinking, yoo-hoo. What about me? It wasn't too long ago, I brought your ancestors out of slavery, out of Egypt, set you free. Remember? I'm one you can look up to, someone to lead you into battle, someone to unify you. But no, they wanted a king. like everyone else. And so it's like they're saying, I know you are God and that you are with us and that you can do all these great things, but we want a leader like everyone else has. A leader with some skin on. Yeah. And can't you just see God sort of just shaking God's head and say, you've got to be kidding me. Okay, so we're getting into it here. You ready? Why do they want a king, a human king? Because they have forgotten what they already have in God. They want a king because they've forgotten what they have in God. They have allowed a distance to come between them and God. And that distance, my friends, is never caused by God. They're the ones. We are the ones who move away. So I bet you've seen this picture before. If there it is, all right. Yes, there it is. It's a painting by Michelangelo, and it is part of his massive work that covers the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So I think we have that picture. There's a picture of the entire thing. It's a room almost exactly the same size as this room we're in now. And every inch of that is painted, at least on the top half, by Michelangelo. It's unbelievable. But in that one picture, let's go back to that. I love this picture because it portrays God on the right, reaching towards, straining towards humankind. And what is God getting in return? Just kind of this very casual, lift of a finger, right? So a fun fact here, if you give me this just for a moment. The Pope, who was the Pope during Michelangelo's heyday, so it's right around 1500, so 500 plus years ago. The Pope was really good friends with another amazing artist of that day, a man named Raphael. So at this point, Michelangelo's in his 20s, and all these amazing things he's doing are happening. Raphael's a little older, and Raphael is sick and tired of all the hype that's going on around Michelangelo. And so Raphael gets with the Pope, and they cook up a little scheme to humiliate Michelangelo, to embarrass him by commissioning him, a high-profile commissioning for him to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So why is that a problem? Because Michelangelo is a sculptor. Think chisel and rock. He's not a painter with a paintbrush and paint. This is the Ted Lasso story, right? He's a coach of football, and they bring him in to coach soccer. It's a different deal. But Michelangelo foiled their little plan by painting the ceiling and creating an absolute masterpiece, unmatched in all of human history. The guy was good. He was so good that 500 years later, tens of thousands of people every day pay somewhere between $30 and $100 to see his art, to see his statues, to see what he has done. So again, back to this painting, then we see God portrayed reaching toward us, towards humankind, even straining towards us. And what is God getting in return? A very casual lift of the finger. So I love this image of God reaching, straining towards us. Because still today, God is reaching and straining towards us, you and me. Just as that same God was reaching and straining even toward the Israelites in Samuel's time. And what does God get in return? Not always, but most of the time, no more than a nonchalant lift of the finger, right? Well, it was a child who once commented that she wanted a God with some skin on. You know the setting, you can imagine. It's wonderful to be able to pray to God from beneath the comforter with a flashlight, or maybe it's an iPad in the 21st century, right? And that's nice, but it's even better when mom just comes in and sits on the bed and rubs your back until you fall asleep. That's a better thing. So here's our note to self. The Israelites wanted a king because they had allowed a distance to develop between them and God. They wanted a king because they'd allowed this distance to come. God didn't move, but they did. God is still right there. And God is still right here among us. No king needed. And here we are today. And it's not that we're asking for a king. We aren't knowingly seeking someone else to lead us. That's not really it, other than God. And yet our lives, our minds, our to-do lists are often so full that we begin to allow this distance to grow between us and God. Or perhaps for you, it's not that, but it's that you've let all the bad news. Lord knows there is plenty of bad news. There's so much bad news and all of your struggles and all of your hurt and worry to overwhelm your sense of God and God's peace. And then as a result of that, our own lack of faith, our lack of a relationship with God then is causing us to dismiss God as either irrelevant or at least not helpful. And so it's like we say, give us a king. Give us something else. I need something more. But I promise you, God hasn't moved. God is still with you, and God is still able. So we don't need anything or anyone else to lead us. God can handle it. So our challenge for today is to draw close to God, or maybe just to close the distance some. But how, you might say? There's so many things we can do, but let's not get too far into, let's not get all caught up in the doing. So again, there's that picture. I'd say to draw close to God, I'd say the first thing we could do is do something more than merely lifting a finger. We can do that, right? In the painting, if you'll note, that if the person would only just get a little bit of effort, he would touch the hand of God. So I bet each of us knows something we could do to draw closer to God. Maybe it's something we don't want to do, but each of us, I bet, knows something. Start there. And if not that, then start by praying and asking God where you can start. And then pay attention and do that. Well, I'll close with this thought, and that is there's a beautiful irony in this whole thing, isn't there? And that is that one day, God sent us a king with skin, and his name was Jesus. And now that is a king worth following. And all God's people said, amen, amen indeed.